Well, thank you, Chairman Spratt. The number of jobs lost hits home, I think, to all of us. Each of us probably have different experiences. I remember the day that a large corporation took over the corporation that my father was working for, and he had worked so hard, and so he was called into the corporate offices, and he was told, well, he was just told to show up, and we all assumed he was going to get a raise or a promotion because he had been working hard. This was during the 1950s, and they let him go because they said they were doing a corporate restructuring. We were waiting for him. He didn't come home until the middle of the night because he couldn't face us. Mr. Chairman, that is happening every single day 20,000 times. That's the face 3.6 million jobs. Most of these are breadwinners. I suspect that over this Christmas vacation, there were any number of parents who had to take their child aside and explain to them they were no longer going to be able to go back and finish out the last half of their academic year at college because they could no longer afford it. Or imagine the mother and father sitting their children down and explaining that they had lost their home. They weren't sure where they were going to go. They would probably have to leave their school. We look at these numbers and they're devastating, but I know that you are particularly sensitive, as Mrs. Tsongas was as well, to the human face behind these tragic numbers. The worst, really, is since the Great Depression in many ways. And it didn't have to happen. For 7 years of the Bush administration, we saw the largest corporate profit ever in American history. But it's interesting that 40% of that profit at one point went to the financial services industry alone, and 96% went to the wealthiest 10% of Americans. So that the Americans who have to defend our country are called on to fight our wars, who pave our roads and build our bridges, who form the workforce that produced that corporate profit, were left with 4% of the income growth during the last 7 years to share. And so they relied upon borrowing from the increasing asset of their homes. The amount of money borrowed against home equity and credit cards is exactly equal to the increase in consumer spending. Americans did what their leadership asked them to in 2001. They went out and spent at the mall. But they didn't have the commensurate income gains to afford that expenditure. And as a result, now that the real estate market has crashed through people in large part manipulating the market for their own gain, and the disparity between the borrower and the lender and all these exotic derivatives that were meant to expand this industry, now we find ourselves in an economic crisis, Mr. Chairman, and you are laying out the figures that this Congress must address on behalf of the American people. I'll have more to say, but I very much appreciate the profundity of these numbers that you are sharing with us today.